So since you are all making your own presentations, can you just say something so I know you are there? I see Naushad, I see Gopal, I see Rishi.
Hi, Chris, this is Naushad. Hi.
Gopal? Hi. Rishi, I can hear you. Gopal? Gopal, you may be muted. Gopal?
No, Gopal is there. I don't see him.
He's there. He's muted. He's on mute.
Gopal, are you on the right link? Can you see whether you can share your presentation? He is there.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can. Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Fine. Okay. Fine.
And Chris,
might be dialing on two devices.
And you can hear me also, Chris, correct?
Yes, Saurabh, I can hear you. Rajan, can you say something?
Yeah, I'm here, Chris.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, hi, Chris, can you hear me? Prashant here.
Yes.
Okay.
I think shall we start?
Chris, am I audible now?
Yes, you are, Gopal.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this important breakout session on research, development, and innovation scheme. Although I made a presentation in the thematic session, maybe some of you may not be there, so I will just recap, some of the aspects which I had told and will help for the the overall meeting, and then I will hand it over to Chris for steering this presentation. So let me share my screen, and I will just share the presentation. So can you see the can all of you see the slides?
Yeah.
I think the context is that in the interim budget last year, the finance minister had announced that a corpus of rupees 1 lakh crore will be established with a 50-year interest-free loan. And it was also written that the corpus will provide long-term financing or refinancing with low or nil interest rates. Then in the full budget, that is in July, this was reiterated to say that a fund will be set up with a financing pool of rupees 1 lakh crore. In this budget, 20,000 crore has been allocated against this fund to the Department of Science and Technology. And this announcement also said that a deep tech fund of funds will also be explored to catalyze the next generation startups. Now note that in the last year budget, it was mentioned that a 50-year interest-free loan will be set up. Now, let me just give you the context of this interest-free loan. So the scheme will somehow operate like this, that the central government, that is in this case the DST, it will give a 50-year interest-free loan to an intermediate entity, and we will call that to be a research, development, and innovation fund. So therefore, this 50-year interest-free loan will not go directly to the beneficiaries. It will go to this first level custodian of the fund. And then this first level custodian will identify the second level funds, which could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any numbers, including a deep tech fund of fund, to which it will give this concessional loan, maybe with a period in this case of 10 to 15 years, and with some interest rate, which has to be decided here. It could be 0 to 3, whatever. And then this second level fund manager will invest in startups, corporates, and private sectors. So these funds could be sector specific, or they could be financial instrument specific, like one which will take. Now note that this second level fund manager can take equity also. It can also give debt, and it can do a hybrid of both also. So there is a combination. No grants will be given. And the second level fund manager can be, institutions such as TTP, BIRAC, some VC funds, existing, new organizations, all possibilities are there. So I think this is sort of the rough context, so that you will know. And other than this, everything is open because the announcement was made, which I already DST is in the process of now putting together an institutional structure, and today's discussion will help us to formulate this. So thank you very much, I think, for participating. I have requested Chris Gopalakrishnan to chair this session, and I will hand it over to him, and then we can proceed forward for today's discussion.
Thank you, Professor Karandikar, and thank you all for participating. DST had created a pool of experts to help facilitate today's discussion. And we have asked 5 subgroups on different aspects of how this fund will be structured, managed, operated, etc. And I will now request a leader from each of these subgroups to make a presentation. They will take approximately 10 minutes to make their presentation. The remaining, there will be about another 14 people are invited to make comments, intervene on the presentation so that we get broad range of inputs. Now, there are probably more than 1,000 participants today. And so what we have done is we have created a feedback mechanism in MyGov portal. So you can actually go to MyGov portal, and all your inputs can be logged there, recorded there. On the chat box, we will actually give you how to access the MyGov portal and give your feedback. So first, as Professor Karandikar said, there is a first level of let's say a fund, RDI fund, or a special purpose vehicle, which is in DST. And then we have created actually 4 other subgroups. One to fund private sector R&D. Second one is funding deep tech startups. Third one is to look at how can we create large number of lab to market seed stage startups. And the fourth one is how do we invest in deep tech funds so that we can broaden the reach of this fund across many many sectors and many startups. So I will now request Gopal Srinivasan to make his presentation. Now this is the one on the RDI fund itself, how it will be structured and managed. Gopal, over to you. You may share your presentation also. Yeah, we can see the presentation, Gopal. Yes, go ahead. Gopal, we cannot hear you.
I think he's muted probably.
Yeah. No, it's great to be part of this initiative, and I'll just very briefly do three things. But what I've been asked to do is to talk on essentially the overall SPV and how it can be structured and how the funds can flow. I'll reiterate some excellent points which have already been made. I will build on some of the points, highlight a few, and with some small additions. So the most important critical principles, the way I looked at it from hearing and also has been reinforced in this conversation is first is we need a level of strategic autonomy, lean structures and strong governance for such a ambitious project, which essentially is embarking on the process of creating very, very high risk, deep impact ventures for the country. So obviously a very transparent reporting mechanism, very, very clear governance mechanism, and a good level of tech depth will be important. This approach will mean that the organization which is created, the mission governance mechanism that is created, will have the ability to establish whatever frameworks it needs to govern well and execute it. The second thing is the operational model must permit the taking of risk. That means that there should be very little concerns about returning the 50-year, 20,000 crore loan, and whatever is invested is done with taking the right decisions to take the risk in these new sectors of technology. And from that point of view, a few considerations have been offered in the presentation. Lastly, we need to have a very wide range of instruments to be deployed. I think as Secretary himself pointed out, some of it could be equity, some of it could be debt, something could be an AIF. A fund of funds also has to operate. They cannot be grants, but effectively there can be something like a redeemable debt or which appears to operate as a grant at a very, very low interest rate. And we can get into that separately. So looking at the three phases, right, the invention phase, the TR phases, the innovation phase, where you might actually require equity and maybe a convertible grant, and then the diffusion or scaling phase where you need equity and debt, we need to provide all of these instruments to the various grades of risk that we see. One point I wanted to bring to the attention of the group which is assembled here is that an AIF technically will not be able to take a loan. And from that point of view, it's important that the structure which goes to the AIF or the fund of funds, we need to make sure that it is more by way of a subscription, or we might have to make significant amendments to the current SEBI guidelines in order to reach that goal. So with these points in mind, I think there were about 4 things I wanted to talk about regarding how to deploy the capital. First is we need a very, very simple, clear mission governance board. The mission governance board should have a light structure, majority non-government representatives from the scientific community, research community, and independents with an independent chairman. The internal governance must not only have an investment committee and a tech evaluation committee, but also very high levels of tracking metrics and reporting progress to all the stakeholders that exist. And in such a way, it must get a level of, shall we say, latitude from things such as CAG, CVC, and basically it must be free to operate as if it is an autonomous institution. The L2 fund managers, and I must thank Vallabhji for his excellent thought, it will be ideal to take the L2 deployment vehicles and cluster them by tech streams. So level of technology depth emerges in them. So for example, if somebody is looking into one aspect of technology or one set of technologies, perhaps the FROs or a NBFC or AIF that is operating is actually clustered into those areas. So there could be 2-3 clusters as one idea that came through, and it seemed to me a very idea worth exploring. The entity itself is not that important. It will probably be a Section 8 entity, and to house the mission office that the DST will create for this mission. And it will also provide all the accounting infrastructure, where the money has gone, how it has been spent, what has been the way it has been spent, etc. But also we should think about whether it necessarily has to be more than 50% owned by the government, or whether it could be even more than 50% owned by non-government, so that strategic autonomy along with good governance and transparency, is available. Lastly, coming into the nuts and bolts, clearly we'll need a very wide range of instruments with which to operate this mechanism. So by looking at whether it's a convertible grant or equity or a debt, we will have to get some exemptions from things like general financial rules in order to be able to do these kind of instruments, because some of them could be innovative new instruments which we might need given the spectrum of risk that we're going to underwrite. On the return side, one suggestion that I wanted to make is if we can find a way to actually set aside a small amount of money in the beginning, which can be put away at, say, GSEC, that can actually probably return the principal amount of the loan that is being given. This will enable us to take the right levels of risk that we need to take in order to service this development of this new innovation infrastructure that this country is ambitiously aiming to develop. Some of the areas to enable returns will include all the classical instruments such as priority distributions, where the fund can get back its money at a capped rate of interest, where basically the daughter funds of the fund of funds will be able to effectively sell back some of, or have the fund of funds buy back some of their in units in order to give better returns and encourage third-party LPs. Because the words that I noticed in the budget is the idea of blended finance. So when we want to create blended finance in the daughter funds or the fund of funds in particular, we will actually encourage significant amount of third-party participation. So by creating mechanisms such as priority distribution, where the fund of funds gets a capped returns, then other investors get better returns, and vice versa, when the daughter funds are able to have their units bought back by the fund of funds, the same effect takes place. Clearly, the first 3-4 years are very important to gain credibility by making 1 or 2 wins, because among those wins, there will also be obviously experiments that didn't go the way we wanted to. So this is broadly the contours that for a very initial draft discussion for the iteration 1 came forward. And I mean, again, I'd like to emphasize the idea that, 2 points to keep in mind for the DST is, one is AIFs typically will need not loans, but actually units to be subscribed to by the primary RDI fund vehicle. And secondly, keeping aside a small amount of money on the side, say 5% plus, could actually ensure we repay the 20,000 crores at the end of 50 years, so that the balance money can actually be put to work in a very, very innovative way and make sure that this innovation infrastructure is created. So, and if done right, with the returns we would expect from debt, from equity, and from the fund of funds, effectively there will be a permanent and perpetual corpus that can operate. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Gopal, for one wonderful presentation. Can I request everybody to mute? And when you are requested to speak, you can unmute, because we are getting feedback from your microphones. Next, I will request Mr. Baba Kalyani, who is here with me, to talk about funding private sector R&D, and we will get the presentation.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Professor Karanikar. Pleasure to be here and talk about the RDI scheme that is been put up by the government of India in its recent budget. I will talk more about how do you use this scheme as a vehicle to create an innovation-driven economy. This is what India really needs. In the last 75, 76 years, our economy has been a factor-driven economy, not an innovation. I think this is a very bold move and a path-breaking move by the government to create a corpus to fund R&D in the private sector. I think a couple of assumptions that have been made in creating a model for this is the financial support extended by the government of India, the private sector R&D fund, to different mechanisms. Some of them were talked about by Karandikar, some of them were talked about by Gopal Srinivasan. But whatever it is, there will be some money that will flow to the private sector for R&D. And we are hoping that this will have no GFR obligations. It's extremely important. You cannot do private sector R&D with GFR obligations. So I think that's something that needs to be kept in mind. And this will also make the private sector access resources, talent, scientists across the globe, not only in India, but across the globe. I think this is also something that the Honorable Prime Minister has been saying for a long time, that how do you get more people who are oriented to science and technology involved in creating a much better Indian economy and a much better product nation. The biggest problem in India in technology and technology development is this whole valley of death syndrome that we have a lot of institutions, labs that do a lot of research, and they can go up to the level L3, L4, L5, and they don't know what to do after it, because then the money is not available to scale it into commercial products. And I think that's where industry has to come in, and that's where industrial R&D has to come in. And I think something like this will be definitely path-breaking to make that happen. What is also important is to target global leadership in some selected domains where we have a right to win. And that's something we need to think very deeply about in terms of which are those selected domains and technologies where India as a country has a right to win. We also need to identify technology gaps and capability gaps. Some of these are connected with, let's say, security. Some of these are connected with the larger purpose, like what will impact a large level of population in this country in terms of technology. Just to give an example, if you look at Google, Google doesn't do any research that does not impact at least a few million people in terms of outcome. And therefore, we need to figure out how do we work in areas which impact a very large number of people. There is a country with a large population, and therefore this becomes very important. Support private sector, industry startups in selected technology domains, showcasing a credible roadmap, self-sufficiency and self-reliance. I mean, it's been the mantra that the Honorable Prime Minister has been talking about, and I think India has made some tremendous progress in the last 10, 15 years in this area. And we have to select a couple of domains where we can be in the top 3 levels in those domains. You obviously can't be in top 3 in every domain, but we have to select domains that we can be top 3, and that is where research money, research funding, and resources in terms of human capital has to come. And this must result in making India into a product nation. Next slide, please. This is just, the left-hand side is only an example of how China targeted to achieve exactly what we are talking about in sectors that they thought were important for themselves. But for us, I think the right-hand side is important. Aiming for global leadership, we need to identify technology domains, incentivize product development, and this has to be a detailed exercise. This cannot be done, just discussing for 10, 15 days or something like that. So this is something where obviously DST has to get involved with other organizations, private sector, labs, departments, etc. We also need to identify very clearly where do we have right to win. And that is highly dependent on strong foundational skills base. We have in many areas a very strong foundational skills. I mean, we have a very strong technology skill base in this country. We may have forgotten it, but we also have a very strong metallurgical foundational skills in India. we don't recognize it because it's a very old industry. You know, it's an industry of thousands of years old. But we have a very strong foundational skill base. And many countries in the Western world are forgetting about this. Their technology levels are depleting in this area. So I think these are areas where we create a natural advantage for India if we can do some high-tech work in. Also, areas where we have a large domestic demand. I think anything in this country has a large domestic demand. 3 years ago, under the PMO's leadership, we had done an analysis of the manufacturing sector. Where do we see the manufacturing sector in 2047? Because the Prime Minister's ambition of making India into a, let's say, $35 trillion economy. And we had a list of 12 industries where we see the highest level of growth that will take place. Now, I think those can be used for reference. Now, this can change. Obviously, with time, a lot of things change. But that's a reference point to use. See where the large domestic demand will come. Distinct advantage in terms of resource technology cost. I'll give you a simple example. If you take the metallurgical industry that I talked about, we have the largest amount of natural resources of metallurgy in this country. The problem is we have converted those natural resources into the most expensive natural resources for Indian industry by creating all kinds of tax structures and all kinds of structures of how you procure a mine, all kinds of things. So something that used to come out of Mother Earth, iron ore, at 300 rupees a metric ton, when I started our steel plant in Hospital, now comes out at 9,000 rupees. The same mud that comes out. Okay, I think we have to correct this anomalies, and we have to make India into a strong nation using our own resources, technology, and cost advantages that we have. And of course, this is something that will help us get to a global scale and leadership in the top. Next slide, please. Now, this is in terms of identifying what to fund and establishing the process of how to fund. I think the earlier speaker talked about process to a large extent. The current speaker talked about structure of the process. But in terms of identifying the process of what to fund, I think RDI needs to get aligned with all the mega transitions that are taking place. And clearly, we have 3 mega transitions that we already are fully aware of. One is the whole digital AI transition that's taking place. Second is the energy transition that's taking place. And third is the transition in terms of, earlier we used to call it climate change and all that, but I would call it more like biotechnology, bioengineering, and food security. For a country large as ours, this becomes a very important area of work. And I think that's also on the radar of the government. Honorable Prime Minister keeps talking about it. And therefore, this is something that we need to look at. We also need to look at disruptive new material research. We have a lot of capability in materials technology, but we haven't created a single disruptive new material yet. And this is something which is very, very important. And of course, supply chain transition. Strengthening national security, self-sufficiency, self-reliance in critical technologies, largely related to defense. And the last point here is domains where India possesses distinct advantage for global leadership. I'll just leave it at that. There's a last slide which I'd like my colleague Naushad to talk about. So Naushad, can you please take over?
Thanks, Baba. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
So, thanks. So I'll just build on what Baba said and deal with
this
just
meeting
2 questions.
Is being recorded.
Whom to fund and what success looks like. So whom to fund? We're saying the important thing, of course, is to fund firms and to fund wide and to fund deep. You need the and. We need to fund larger investments so that we make a substantive difference to the firms that we are funding, and they can undertake larger projects than they would otherwise do, with greater risk certainly, but especially larger scale projects that can deliver more innovative outcomes for us. And the same for small and medium firms. Can we identify a substantial number of firms that we can give substantial amounts to, again, as a way of getting things going in this first year that we're deploying the fund. We need to fund firms that have the necessary absorptive capacity. The money is available. It's not so easy to spend money. If you just think about 20,000 crores, it probably involves recruiting 20,000 people minimum in the R&D space. And the only firms that will have the absorptive capacity to do so in the first year at least are those that are already doing a fair amount of in-house R&D. So the pharmaceutical sector, that is our largest R&D sector, the auto sector, the engineering and defense sectors, these are the ones where we have large investments that firms are making now. They have the absorptive capacity to be able to use this fund to inflect going forward. And obviously, firms that are really competitive, and the best test of competitiveness is whether or not they export. Baba's spoken about the need for a really good professional selection committee that needs to be very independent, and that would need to bring in an understanding of both market and technology to be able to fund the right kinds of projects. Moving on to the second question, in terms of success criteria for the projects, and this was actually a question that Abhay asked us earlier, that what would be good success criteria for projects? We said perhaps things like, we suggest a few, IPR patents that are granted particularly, international patents particularly. We should monitor the R&D intensity at the company level. You can't monitor it at the project level, but at the company level, and how close that R&D intensity of the firm is to global benchmarks for that industry. Are we seeing convergence as a result of the funding that we are providing? The number of new researchers that have been hired, and are we seeing results in terms of exports and export growth? Finally, in terms of a success criteria for the scheme broadly, scheme overall, there's a very nice top 2,500 in-house R&D investing firms that the EU brings out every year. It's a worldwide list. And India has had roughly 25 firms in the top 2,500 for the last 10 years. The numbers moves up by one or two firms, comes down by one or two firms each year. You look at China, China's increased its number of firms now to over 500 firms in the top 2,500 worldwide. And so one of our metrics, and maybe even the key metric for the overall scheme, should be how does India shift in the top 2,005? What is our presence in the top 2,500 in-house R&D investing firms as evaluated using an international metric like the top 2,500 Eurostat monitor? Because that, I think, will tell us whether the scheme has had substantive impact and is really developing those innovative capabilities that we all seek. Yeah? I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Baba, and thank you, Naushad. Next, I will request Saurabh Srivastava to talk on, his subgroup was looking at funding deep tech startups. Over to you, Saurabh.
Okay, I hope everybody can see my presentation.
Yes, you can slide show.
Yeah, so I've just put it in simple slides. Okay, so I won't talk about a lot of things that we've already talked about, the other groups have, but just to make two lines saying, look, the R&D ecosystem in developed countries is able to take technologies to a much higher level, TRL 8, TRL 9, largely through public funding. I'm not talking here of corporate R&D because that's a separate group. But a lot of corporate startups are able to take it from there, develop further and commercialize. Now, this is yet to happen in India. This fund and ANRF are supposed to help. But till then, what is happening is a lot of startups are emerging, and that's a very good news. They're emerging, but they're picking up technology at TRL 4, 5, 6 early levels. And so they need serious capital to get to commercial rollout. So they go to VCs. Now, at that time, the valuation is low, and so they don't want to raise too much money because it could be dilutive. For the VC viewpoint, they can't value it too highly because the risk and time to market they're both high. They also don't want excessive founder dilution. So they step back from investing. As it is, there aren't very many VC funds in India that's focused only on deep tech. Now we need an innovative financing structure to solve the catch-22. So I'm making some specific suggestions. We said there's 6,000 crores allocated to it, and we picked 20 startups where we can go up to 200 to 250, let's say 225 crores each. Another 20 startups where we can do, let's say, up to 75 crores each. Now we can dial this up or down a little bit, but there are two levels. This money should be given to a second level fund, which sits under the main entity, which receives the 20,000 crores. Now, this entity should have, and the main entity should have a TDB type mandate. And this allows the structure I'm talking about, which is to invest in debt or equity. Now, this committee should have an investment committee of credible domain experts with industry, investing background. We can refresh it every 3 to 5 years. It's a model that the SIDBI Fund of Funds has followed. We can even consider 2 different committees for the stages. Then I'll go to the second slide. Yeah. Now, depending on the startup being evaluated, because there will be some different domains, this investment committee itself can be authorized to co-opt in specific expertise in that segment. Eligibility should be restricted to startups that are backed by SEBI registered VCs. So there has been serious evaluation already done by experienced people. The fund could invest up to 44 times the amount that the VCs invest in that round. And this investment can be in the form of an optionally convertible debenture. So it would be a loan with, let's say, 2 to 4% low interest rate, maybe a moratorium of a year, maybe tranches based on milestones. But the fund has an option to convert 20% of this debt to equity at one of the subsequent rounds of investment at that round valuation. So the fund doesn't have to get into how they value. Private investors would value it. The fund can take board positions. It can take affirmative rights, which would be designed to protect how the end use is done and how the progress has happened. So they'll have access to all the information. Clearly, we'll have robust conflict of interest policies. Now, collateral against the debt is a tricky issue, so I haven't offered solutions. It needs a lot of discussions. Today, when there are government entities which do something like this, they use personal guarantees, shares pledged by founders, lien on IP. We need a balance because too much of this will scare away VCs and they won't invest or they won't take this kind of funding. So we need that balance. This equity conversion of 20% would hedge against the fact that some of these investments will fail, but the ones that succeed, this 20% upside will make sure that we get a good risk hedged return. And Gopal mentioned this earlier. We could consider deploying some of this money through an FOF route, through some existing AIFs. Also, by saying, look, you invest 2 times the money I give you, in deep tech startups. And we'll say this, our money has seniority on return, but we'll cap our upside. But the challenge here is you're investing in a fund. Most funds have a 8+2 lifespan. And so that will deter long-term vision from those fund managers. That's why it's easier to do it directly, and then you're not, different funds will come and go based on their lifespans. But we will have the ability to do with that money what we really want to do, stay as long as we wish. Government-led demand aggregation will enhance potential for success of these ventures, because many of them are coming up with products and solutions, and we can't just expect all of them to get their market overseas. So helping demand aggregation will, and in fact, make our investment that much more secure. So that's all I wanted to say at this point.
Thank you, Saurabh. Both the presentations have some very good points. We are noting these down. Next, I will request Rajan Anandan to come in. He is going to speak on lab to market seed stage. Every one of these subgroups had other members also. The lead, we are asking what are the leaders to speak. Rajan Anandan speak on this subgroup. Rajan, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Rajan.
Okay. Okay, so this is, we'll talk about how to take a large number of research projects from lab to market. We had several of us working on this. Special thank you to Prashant, who will actually speak about one or two of these ideas as he speaks later on. But let me go through this. So let me start with this. I don't know how many of you recognize the companies on this page, but these are among the most interesting, most impactful. Some are obviously very early stage, some are more evolved, deep tech startups in India. And I'll give you a flavor of what some of these companies are. Some of you may recognize many of these names. Uniphore is actually India's most valuable AI startup. It was an early pioneer in conversational commerce, now has several $100 million of revenue, last round valuation, 2.5 billion, so 20,000 crores. Ather, as all of you know, was the pioneer of EVs in India, and Agnikul is a world's first company in terms of 3D printed rocket engines and things like that. String Bio is a company that is focused on converting methane, things like biofoods and so on. C6 Energy is the former head of R&D at Biocon, who's built this extraordinary sort of robotics company that focuses on seaweed planting, collecting, converting into oils and things like that. Pandorum is probably going to be one of India's most important life sciences companies. Mindgrove and Incore are semiconductor companies, and then Nutrace is one of the 4 companies globally that makes green hydrogen electrolyzers without membranes. Now, what's interesting about all these companies is they're exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about, which is they came out of ideas from research institutes or entrepreneurs going to incubators that are in the top academic institutions in India. 6 of these companies from IIT Madras, Uniphore, Ather, Agnikul, Mindgrove, Incore, and Nutrace, and the 3 companies in the middle are from CCamp, which is a life sciences focused incubator in Bangalore. So the first thing I wanted to sort of start with is we know how to do this, and it's been done. And what we need is thousands of companies that we can put on a page. Today we probably have 80 to 100 companies that are like this. I just picked 9 of them. Also, I'd say that last year our firm Peak 15, we made actually several deep tech investments. 3 of them, Mindgrove, Incore, and Nutrace, came from IIT Madras. We invested in them right out of IIT Madras. So this model works. Now, India today has a handful of what we can think of as world-class deep tech incubators or venture builders. The 2 names that you see, IIT Madras and CCamp, are incubators. Art Park, that Prashant from Axel will talk about, is a venture builder. The reality is India has, hundreds of these incubators, but in reality, we have very, very few of them focused on deep tech, number 1. And number 2, we have even fewer number of them that are truly world class. I think all of you know the IIT Madras Research Park and Incubator. In fact, Gopal, Chris, and others are deeply involved there. Both the Research Park and Incubator, which are together, was launched with 400 crores of debt. And interestingly now, call it 15 years later, it's very self-sufficient, generates free cash flow. So there is a model to build these things self-sustainability. Interestingly, the companies that have come out of IIT Madras Incubator have raised over 12,000 crores of follow-on funding and have over 50,000 crores of valuation, right? And they start with a grant model. It's not an investment, but they take 4% take 4% of equity for incubation. CCamp is a super interesting life sciences incubator. I think it's among the best in Asia. So those of you that haven't been there should go there. And then finally, Art Park is a venture builder, which is sort of a new model that is set up by ISC Bangalore with 170 crores from DST and Karnataka. There are 32 startups and interestingly are launching a 1,000 crore fund. So as we think about funds that we can invest in or teams that we can back, this is clearly one of them. They invest up to 15 crores. Prashant will talk a lot more and bring this to life. I think all of you are familiar with incubators, but I think this venture builder model that Prashant will talk about is actually different and quite interesting. Today we have probably one of them, which is Art Park. We should have more of them. But the one that I know familiarly is the first one on this page, which is the engine at MIT. It is really fascinating. The 20 or 30 companies that I visited about 2 years ago, among the most advanced, deepest breakthrough companies, several nuclear fusion companies, several green cement companies, and so on. And they manage $1 billion and have a 30,000 square foot facility. Actually, it's a very interesting thing to go to benchmark in terms of what we could do. Prashant will talk a lot more about this. So the specific recommendation that we have to really sort of double, triple, quadruple down on this idea, lab to market idea is for India to create 10 world-class deep tech incubators and venture builders, right? So maybe 7 or 8 of them would be incubators and maybe 2 or 3 of them would be venture builders. Clearly, we already have Art Park, which should be scaled up. And these can come from top public research institutes or universities. So think about the IITs, for instance, or IISC, or they could actually be top private universities in India. And we also think that this was Prashant's very good idea on how can we actually also have collaboration between the top Indian universities and research institutes and global universities and research institutes. So for instance, how can we actually have one of these incubators possibly be between, let's say, one of our top institutions that really wants to do this, as well as, let's say, an MIT or a Stanford. And what we'd like to see is in year one, 200 crores, sorry, there's a typo here, 200 crores for each of the 10 selected entities, right? So there's 2,000 crores as part of the 20,000 crores. 10 selected entities, each of them gets 200 crores. Now, in terms of how this could work, a very first cut template that the working group here came up with is there are 10 world-class incubators and venture builders. Each of them gets a 200 crore corpus. Now, part of this corpus, as a placeholder, we said 15 to 20%. Needs to go for capex and opex. As all of you know, deep tech incubators need significant investment in infrastructure, right? So if you go to CCamp, you'll see the kind of world-class infrastructure that they have because they're essentially incubating life sciences companies, and therefore you need to have. And so in some cases, by the way, this number may even be 30 or 40%. So depending on the type of incubator, whether it's a thematic incubator focused on life sciences or quantum, or whether it's what we call a horizontal deep tech incubator, which would be many different sectors like an IIT Madras incubator, the level of capex would vary, right? And also it is important that each of these should be funded adequate amounts of OPEX. One of the things that we have learned as we've looked at India's many hundred incubators is the single biggest differentiator of an incubator that is successful versus not. I'm not talking about deep tech, but more broadly, is who runs the incubator, right? So we need to make sure that each of these incubators is led by a full-time professional. So for instance, Dr. Ghosh, the leader of the IIT Madras incubator is terrific. The same thing goes for CCamp, both of whom, we know quite well because we funded companies from both of those places. But a significant majority of that, so anyway, 15 to 20%, as I said, in some cases, it might go up to 30% would be CapEx and OpEx, but 80 to 85% needs to be invested directly into the startups. And what we'd also like to propose is that each incubator gets to decide which company to invest in. This should not be driven. A central committee or a central group, a selection panel or committee should decide which incubators to actually partner with and provide the 200 crores to. But the specific decisions on which companies to fund should be left up to the incubators, because it is that incubator team that works day in and day out every single hour with companies, and they are in the best place to decide, and they will pull, much like in IIT Madras. I'm always impressed to see the kind of domain experts they're able to pull in as they're helping their companies, as they're evaluating their companies. And we think that the first check, especially for a very early, let's say a PhD student who wants to start up, can be in the 10 lakh range, but very quickly should also go to 50 lakhs. And then through a stage gate process, and this is actually pretty well developed at incubators like CCamp, and several others in India, that the level of investment per company should go up to about 10 crores, because we think with at least 10, possibly in very rare cases, this might also have to go to 15 or 20 crores. We think that given the lower cost structures in India, especially of human capital, we can get companies to a stage where they become venture fundable. So that's really what we're talking about. The last thing we'd say is, I think this is the kind of thing where we should call for applications from any institution, either university or research institution that wants to set this up. We should have an independent, top tier selection panel that will be able to go through these and decide who we would like to fund. But we really do think, what I'd say is, I'm a graduate of MIT and Stanford, and I spent a lot of time at both institutions. And what I can confidently say today is that IIT Madras is there, right? Is there. So we just need to continue to support, let's say, that institution and create 10 more like that. And I think if we can do that, we will literally see 500, 1,000, 2,000 startups come out and the caliber of an Aether in the caliber of a Unifor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan, for that wonderful presentation. Next, let me call upon Gopal Srinivasan and XP Singh. I think, is it Gopal who's making the presentation or SP?
SP is also joined now.
He joined, sir.
Both of us have joined, Chris. I could join a bit late because of some technical error. So Gopal, I had requested he will take the presentation forward. Just I'll give a brief. In fact, this fund of fund experience which SIDBI has, and Gopal has been to the VCIC, that is the committee which is taking the decision. In fact, fund of fund experience is one of the best examples of public capital and the private decision. In fact, it was a fund of fund established by DPIIT, Government of India. But the decision where to invest, I mean, which AIF to be supported, is purely independently taken by the independent experts like a venture capitalist. So it has reflected a very good result in past 10 years. And in fact, today AIF market where in India it is standing is solely because of this fund of Government of India. Perhaps that is the time right now for the deep tech as well, because there are only few funds who are currently actually investing into deep tech. So perhaps this initiative which Government of India has taken will be creating the same kind of mindset among the people to take the deep tech forward. So we have suggested that how the fund of fund operations can be taken forward, because definitely to promote deep tech fund managers and deep tech companies, there should be some differentiated parameters than the normal fund of fund which we have operated till date. So there are a couple of points which we have made, and I'll request Gopal to kindly take it forward.
Gopal?
I think he's muted.
I think Gopal, you are on mute.
Yeah.
Super. And can you see me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gopal.
Can't see you.
No, he can be seen. I think that you
Okay,
are
okay,
green.
Okay, go ahead.
He can be seen as his video.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think, I mean, at the end of this meeting, we mastered WebEx. So, so I think thank you again, SP, for this introduction. Again, I want to reinforce that the role of SIDBI's fund of funds, DPIIT's fund of funds, has actually ended up in creating a VC industry in this country. So the power of a fund of funds can actually be best experienced right here, right now, in this era of Bharat itself, even before the Viksit Bharat comes. So it is a fantastic idea that the government and DST and the PM's vision to actually start a deep tech fund of funds. I think it's absolutely fabulous. As we start, there are 4 principles I just want to highlight, which makes a deep tech fund of fund different and more effective than the fund of funds we have today. The first one is the tenor. Deep tech is a tenor which we have seen, and Rajan knows this very well. It's very, very difficult to say and call a 5.5 or a 6-year tenor, which is typical in the industry. So we need to make sure that the funds underlying, the daughter funds as we call them, have adequate tenor, and that is reflected in the fund of funds architecture. Typically, a fund of funds should have very, very long, if not perpetual life. The second thing is basically the concept of return. The return expectation has to be modeled very tightly against risk, which means asking the fund of funds to withdraw with a fixed return where possible, permitting the daughter funds to sell up their units back to the fund of funds at a capped return so that we can get these structures to work. The third thing is it basically needs this concept of diffusion. Diffusion meaning you want blended funds to come through the daughter funds. You want the daughter funds to become very attractive to other LPs, both in India and elsewhere, so that they in turn can actually multiply. SIDBI, I believe, has multiplied 5 to 8 times. I hear various estimates. For every rupee from the government, it has become maybe at the level of the individual startup, 5 rupees. So we need to see that mega multiplier effect, which I think the DPIIT SIDBI fund of funds has done, when the infusion should result in great diffusion. So with these principles, there are 4 or 5 ideas for this very preliminary discussion. First is, what is deep tech? So in the area of the SIDBI fund of funds, it is for startups. Startups has a tag given to us by DPIIT. You're a registered DPIIT startup. Tomorrow, when we're giving money on some preferential basis or even there's a slight concessional basis to something called deep tech, we need a non-frictional way in which deep tech can be defined. If, for example, there's a committee and every startup which the daughter fund puts money in goes to that committee, it becomes very complex. So I think this august body of experts could help us to say, if there are certain agencies which say, yes, this is deep tech, and IIT Madras, Rajan spoke so evocatively about IIT Madras and CCAM, equivalent, or it could be a specific group which is of easily accessible experts from academia who can say yes. That I think is very, very important, and that's a mechanism we can put in place with adequate thought and effort. Coming to the fund of funds structure itself, the AMC itself can build upon the rich experience India has already created. For example, SIDBI, SBI CAPs have already created expertise. SBI CAP runs the SRI fund, which is Resurgent India Fund. So there could be joint ventures can be thought of. It's not mandatory, but it's something worth exploring. Secondly, I think to give an out-of-the-box and perhaps slightly egregious idea, the CAT2 fund, which is typically what a fund of funds is, can have a very, very long life. Because if it is structured in what we call as an open-ended fund, it can continuously distribute as well as keep drawing new commitments, not only from this current LP, which is the RDI fund, but even tomorrow, other developmental organizations or other organizations may come and participate in this fund. So having a long life with open-ended structure would actually allow us to stand very firmly in the area of deep tech and be willing to take the horizon risk that comes with deep tech. Because in the idea of invention, innovation, and diffusion, from innovation to diffusion, time can move. Time can be 8 years, time can be 10 years. So it's important the daughter funds, therefore, also have a decent amount of life. We'll come to that separately, but the open-ended long-term tenor is an important area. Again, I think I mentioned this in the opening remarks that basically an AIF can only take units can be subscribed to it, cannot take a loan. So that may be given some due consideration, and that will also permit others to participate in the fund of funds. Approval is, as I think you alluded to, SP, is something that you have done very well at SIDBI, which is to have a series of independent professionals who make initial decisions, and then the board takes the final decision. So I think that's a well-proven mechanism that can be put to use. One thing we don't have in the SIDBI fund of fund, which could also be something to help get better returns for the fund of funds, could be making sure that we co-invest in some of the opportunities, maybe not at the first check, the second check, which the daughter funds do, is very, very standard in our industry, and that may be thought of. It's also very important that the daughter funds have something called priority distribution, because risk is a layered approach. You have high risk, less risk, more risk, etc. So the daughter funds should be able to offer the units which the fund of funds has put into them for repurchase, so that they can exit with a capped return, and then the other private LPs who have come or other LPs who have come get more attracted to put more money into the daughter funds. All of this, of course, will need conversations with SEBI, the open-ended structure, the priority distribution. Some of them are already there. Some of them might need a bit of tweaking. I've already spoken a lot about what we've learned from SIDBI, so I won't say much more about it, other than the fact to say that both venture debt and credit can be considered as daughter funds from the fund of funds. And even guarantee mechanisms, and I must say thank you, SP, for that idea that we want diffusion, we want to democratize the access people have by creating multiple agencies. Some daughter funds, maybe some banks who lend to some of these deep tech startups can take a little bit of a guarantee from the fund of funds and then basically put more money out there, and there can be a compensatory mechanism for that. Non-uniform commercial models, I know it's a very odd term, but what we're saying is basically we need to make sure that the fee structure is tightly managed at the fund of funds level, and therefore we may not want to necessarily fix a number, but look at size, scale, operations, and do a budget-based approach towards the fee structure, and of course some amount of profit sharing to the manager. Daughter funds should also have a longer life, at least 12 years life minimum, because again, as funds rush, we've seen VC funds in India rushing into a wall and coming to the end of the fund life, and then having to do continuity funds, and there becomes a lot of complexity and friction and potentially loss of good investments because of that reason. So this is what I think we've come up with this initial draft. The fund of fund must have the flexibility also to contribute a larger amount, maybe 35, maybe more of each deep tech fund, because there are not that many people who are willing to write checks today to deep tech daughter funds, which are truly deep tech in a manner in which this visionary group at DST is thinking about. They should add at least 1x more of contribution from their own side to the deep tech investments that they make from the daughter fund. Our suggestion is that maybe if we put 5,000 crores into this as a potential corpus, give it to about 10 different funds, then maybe they would effectively deploy 10,000 crores. And if you look at the amount that the daughter funds are investing into companies, there would be other co-investors coming into those companies. So actually the effective impact using SIDBI norms could be as high as 20,000 crores for the 5,000 crores. So these are some of the points for consideration. Again, thank you, SP. This is your presentation, and I'm just sort of voicing it out in your behalf. And of course, you have all the deep experience to back it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you.
In fact, almost perfect timing. We wanted to close this part of the presentation 45, so it's 3:46. Now I'm going to call upon the different people who have been asked to give their feedback, comments, etc. Please make it very brief, maybe 3 minutes, so that we can conclude appropriately. So let me call upon first. This is no particular order; it's just the list that I have in front of me. So Satish Reddy.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just make a couple of points. This is more from a pharmaceutical industry, life sciences industry perspective, adding on to the comments already made by Baba Kalyani and Naushad Forbes on this catalyzing private sector R&D investments. So Naushad spoke about making the case for the absorption capacity of this kind of large funds. And pharma industry certainly counts among those, because currently, if you see, I think what we require is innovation at scale. And when I refer to innovation, I'm talking about discovering original products, because as you know, the industry is largely based on APIs and generics, very, very highly competitive. Even large companies like us, invest the profits that we make from generics and APIs into discovery. So it's not a good model at this point of time, but we're still at it. Success still eludes us in terms of taking a original discovery on a global scale. But I think funds like this, the idea that's being proposed, will actually go a long way, especially in large companies taking more shots at the goal. So that was one of the points I wanted to make, because just to give an example, if you go back to history, company called Glaxo that most of you will be familiar with, earlier it used to be about infant foods and vitamin D and some penicillin products they used to make in the 60s. But then when they discovered ranitidine, Santac, by which the brand name it goes, it completely changed the face of what Glaxo is about. It became the top 5 pharmaceutical companies in the world in the early 2000s. It was just one product that completely changed the face of company. And this is a potential which, again, I would say Indian pharmaceutical companies have the capability, because they also have the talent, the scientific talent. Handful of companies spend huge amounts, which again was pointed out, in the presentation. But the thing is, if it's aided by funds such as these, it can actually help more. So that's one of the points. You also, in terms of the cost structure, Indians can do it at a much lower cost. As you know, it's a long gestation time. It is highly risky. But again, companies will go about innovating. So that's the first point. Specifically on the funding itself, I just wanted to give the example of what, say, China did or even Israel did, where the government pitched in. Blended finance models that have been talked about, for example, which got more and more VCs to come and participate, and they could fund startups. And then the valley of death syndrome, which we talked about. In our industry, the way it works is, especially when the proof of concept is made, which is around the TRL 7 stage. That's where I think this kind of models would work, where the equity can come in. But when it gets closer to commercialization, maybe some kind of a debt kind of a model could come in, because the revenue generating capacity would be much, much clearer by the time. So that's how this whole structure could be made. And also, if you see, the China in this as an example, right? They started pretty late, even compared to India when it came to discovery. But the model by which they went about this, in terms of other matters which is not being discussed here, in terms of creating the ecosystem, that propelled them to discover more and more drugs. Today, we are talking about a pipeline of pharmaceutical products, which is at a scale completely different, next only to the US. I believe India has the capacity, so that's where I would stop. Thanks, Chris.
Please make it very brief. And only points which have not been covered, if possible, please say. Ajay Chowdhury. Ajay, are you there? You're on mute, probably. So please unmute and speak.
Yeah, he's unmuted. No,
he's unmuted only. Ajay, we can't hear you.
Okay, I will go to the next person while Ajay figures out. Sharat Sharma.
So I just want to acknowledge the wonderful work that has gone into this. I think we made remarkable progress since 4th January, was it just last year? And I think this path to strategic autonomy in technology is becoming clearer. And all the 5 presentations had a lot of value. I think we are moving directionally correct. My only submission is that as we deploy these 20,000 crores very quickly, this will feed a learning process for us. And we should all collectively be able to sit every year and make sure we make annual changes to the program that will allow us to, both reflect the marketplace changes, ecosystem changes, and our own mistakes as we go forward. So I'll stop here. I just want to commend everybody for the progress that's been made.
Sanjay, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for this opportunity. Wonderful presentations. So I just wanted to make 2 points. Number one is I think we have to take a top-down approach of identifying a few things that we want to do in this 20,000 crores rather than trying to do everything. So Baba, you kind of pointed out the ways to select where we have a right to win. I think we should add 2 more criteria. One is right to win. Second could be things for which we need strategic autonomy, which means without which India cannot, be subjected to, whims and fancies of other nations. And third, which is a large market opportunity both in India and internationally. So I think within those 3 criteria, we should very quickly, first of all, decide 5, maybe, maximum 10 areas. So that's number one. And that should be done at the DST level with the help of experts. Second is we need to break down the value chain of those 5 or 10 areas and say that these are the 5 or 10 things which need to be solved in the country. And basically farm out those problems to different either academic institutes, companies or whatever, so that we complete the jigsaw puzzle, because no one company can complete it and we don't have the time for everybody to do and work on the same things. As related to this problem, if there are certain pieces of technology that we don't or cannot afford to waste time and reinvent the wheel, we should set aside a part of this fund for technology acquisition, including patents or IPR or process or whatever it takes, so that we jumpstart into those pieces of the puzzle that we don't have the time to do. So that's the second part, which means you create the whole puzzle, figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to get, and ensure that we get that thing done. Third thing is we need to really get the capacity built up in terms of leaders who can actually execute on all these projects. We should aggressively reach out to the Indian diaspora around the world who have done products and build some companies like this and really make sure that different pieces of these problems are solved by them. And then the last part I wanted to say is that the success of this program should be products and solutions that come out and generate revenues for the country. I think that should really be what is important. And for that, the second part of where I would say the fund should set aside some funds is for ensuring commercial success. So anything which is hardware oriented will have a chicken and egg problem that unless you get economies of scale, you won't be cost effective. So some amount of money can be set aside to ensure that the economies of scale handicap, which is there in a product company at the initial stages, is filled up by this fund. This is really where I'll pause, but excellent ideas in terms of the execution of the plan.
Ajay, we cannot still hear you. Some don't be. Are you there? Moving doesn't seem to be there. Anand Deshpande.
No, I think I don't have anything particular to add. I would like to commend DST on the great initiative. I think this will encourage all of us to take bigger risks.
Thank you, Anand. Ashish Dhawan.
Thanks, Chris. Chris, I like the 3 archetypes. One is to have the incubators and venture builders, because this will, at the very early stage, through these academic institutions, create these deep tech companies. And if we can get 10 of these started with the 20,000 crore, that would be meaningful, as was suggested. Second is the fund of funds to incubate a set of 10 to 15 funds out of this pool of capital, and the rest a growth fund. And I think if we can look at 50 companies where it's much larger ticket, 50 to 500 crore, and there we may want to think about the sectors where the companies are more likely to scale, like pharma being one example, and the ticket size can be much larger. So in my mind, at least, I break it up into these 3 buckets. The first 2 just leave it sector agnostic, and the third one, be more selective in terms of the sectors, the companies, because that's where we can get scale the fastest.
Thank you, Ashish. I know we have a lot of work to do after today, so thank you very much. Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, are you there? I see. Rishi, go ahead.
I would like to echo some of the points which others made, but I'll be very quick. One is, I think you remember, Chris, we were on a committee which reviewed BIRAC, and one thing we found is many of the enterprises were stuck at the POC stage. So I think we really need to focus the money beyond the POC stage, particularly at Series B kind of investments. We need to go up to investments even up to about $10 million. Sometimes for deep tech, you need significant investments, and some of the creative convertible debt structures which were talked about would be very useful. I think we need to align some of these things also to the areas where we are looking at academic research, because one thing you can see clearly is that the academic research and our industrial research need to be aligned to a degree. So I think it makes sense if we can align some of these things with the areas where ANRF is going to focus and also where national priorities have already been determined. I think choice of sectors really matters because there are some sectors which are clearly R&D intensive and need kind of leadership. And I would just echo what Sanjay Nayak said, that we really need to look at the sectors very carefully. I would also like to suggest that we look very carefully at bringing in some good R&D management experts and R&D technology experts from the diaspora. Again, Sanjay made this point. You look at companies like Tata Motors, for example, which benefited a lot from Mr. Sumantran, or Mahindra from Pavan Goenka. These are the kind of people who really changed the sort of complexion of R&D that was being done. So we need to have more such people in our ecosystem if this kind of money is to be absorbed. And in many cases, we may not be able to start from scratch. It may not make sense. If you look at Samsung or many of these companies, they started by acquisition and then working on technologies and developing and improving them rapidly. So we should allow part of this fund to be used for this very selectively to acquire technologies and leapfrog wherever necessary. I think subject to that, I would like to say that the presentations were excellent and I endorse many of their ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishi, for those wonderful suggestions. Request Vallabh Bansali to come in. Vallabh, are you there? Are you muted?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think this is very, very heartening to see this kind of serious effort to convert an idea into reality. Just 2-3 points to repeat what Professor Krishnan said. Not only permit acquisition of companies, but permit acquisition of talent for evaluation and really deciding what is cutting edge and where the opportunities are. So I think that's one area I would like to emphasize. Second, though it has been mentioned in passing, it will be important to incentivize our managers. So, letting them get some ESOPs, etc., will be very useful. Third is, though that 1 lakh crore is a large amount compared to the past, I think how do we quickly grow to a larger fund? And I think in 10-15 years' time, so Ashish, I didn't understand fully what he said by growth fund. I think there's a huge amount of potential to, through stock options, etc., if you can create a structure that every investment has some 10% or 20% options and so on. So if that financial modeling can be done, it becomes a large pool of capital, because the conflict I'm seeing is that there will be this temptation to go into areas of bigger potential or where we have right to win. That is only to start. Actually, we have to catch up on several areas. So we need to, widen the scope of the sectors that we do. And therefore that 1 lakh crore has to grow, whether it comes from government or it comes from, recycling of these funds, has to be thought of as well. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Vallabh. As usual, wonderful suggestions. Can I now request Jaspreet Singh Solanki to come in?
Yeah, good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'll talk specific related to defense industry. Very good inputs received today. So 3 general point and 1 specific point. First is about the mindset. Good to see that it is changing from being traders to being builders. That's the shift, and it's glad we are moving towards that direction. There's a myth called cheap and best. We believe that we can produce best product with cheap investment. I don't believe in that. I think that's another good point which is coming out, that if we want the best, then probably we'll have to invest and get the best out of it. Second point, freedom within framework. When you design this, and this is a general point, all the policies do account for failures, and in new areas, the failures will happen and we must celebrate them. That's the second point. Third, and it has already been said, experts should lead experts. My general experience is the managers leads experts, and that's where a lot of issues comes. And if we want a product nation and product development, then we must give higher salaries, higher incentives to the experts who are there, not just to the managers. So these three general points, and one specific, when you are identifying any critical areas where we need to develop expertise, best in the world, do give funding to the 2 or 3 large corporate in that areas and 2-3 startups in that area. So you will have collaborations between both sides of the dimensions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jasbir. Again, good points. Actually, Rajan mentioned the next 2 companies. So Swapnil Jain from Ather.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll just quickly talk about, as somebody who has seen the entire journey from incubation to now hopefully becoming a corporate. So one thing I would suggest is that in the incubation cells, I think being a focus to a particular area is going to be quite critical. A generic incubation cell may not be as useful, because as we have mentioned that as the presentation talked about, that we need to have certain infrastructure which helps the deep tech companies to sort of grow and support in the early days. So having that infrastructure, hence having a thematic as Sanjay also mentioned, that focus on commercialization will be very crucial. Just patents filed as a measure of success may not be the best thing. Moving from how many patents actually reached commercialization and what kind of benefit we receive from there, I think that's going to be critical. Third, while we're talking about deep tech, I just want to be sure that there is a lot of product development which we still need to do, which I'm not sure if will get categorized very well as deep tech or not, but something which is still important for us to grow, because we are still migrating from being a country of traders to country of builders, and in that journey, not everything might not be very deep tech, and something which might be pure product development, which is not something which is very important for a regular VC ecosystem, or which does not make a quick money for VC ecosystem, is something which we may have to look into. And lastly, I think spoken enough, but again, focus on choosing the sectors would be important. Otherwise, we might just spread the money thin. So I definitely believe that choosing sectors is going to be very, very critical.
Well, spoken from practical experience. Thank you. Similarly, Giritharan Tirupati Rajan from Agnikul.
I'm here, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So thank you for providing this opportunity, and good evening, everyone. So I have no specific point to add to the presentation. I think the presentations covered every single point that is suitable for a deep tech startup like this. I think one point that I resonate with Swapnil is I think the fund has to concentrate on specific technologies that won't give immediate returns, but very helpful for someone who is building world-class product out of India. That's it. So we thank DST and the government for this kind of initiative, and we believe this will give a lot of boost for startups like us who are working in the deep tech and trying to build innovative world-class product out of India for the world. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thank you, Giritharan, again from experience. Now, can I request Prashant Prakash to come in?
Chris, thank you. I think largely Rajan covered a lot of the points. I'll just mention that one organization that we looked at when we did Art Park and we modeled around that was this organization called A-Star in Singapore. And I found two elements very interesting in A-Star. One was they had a national research plan which broadly drove, their innovation agenda. So I think Baba Kalyani spoke about prioritization. So I think that prioritization can lead to a national research agenda, which can be a guiding template for what areas get picked up. And the second point I want to make is we have to compress the time that we are going to take to become this builder nation, right? So I think this is where global collaborations may be quicker in the private industry and the private sector, as in the private institutions. So Plaksha, for example, one of the new engineering institutions is fast tracking some of this kind of venture building activity. So, and the last point I'll make is that venture builders are slightly more important than incubators. The reason is there is no pipeline of research-based entrepreneurs in the country, and there needs to be really a team that needs to get built for a lot of these TRL 1 to 3 type of projects, and so there is a problem in how these get started unless the teams get built. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Prashant. Mukundan, are you there? Can you speak?
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I had 4 or 5 different points, but most of them have been covered by Gopal, Rajan, and other speakers earlier. I'll restrict myself to 2 points which I thought should be brought to this forum. One is there is a need for keeping it simple and flexible at this stage when we are talking at a very high level. And need not be too prescriptive. For example, whether we should say that I'm a big advocate of skin in the game, but at the same time, should we design it by saying that there should be a 1:1, which has to be there at the daughter fund level, whether it should be at every company level. This is a fundamental research we are talking about, and the ability of raising third-party capital is that much more challenging for a country like India. The ecosystem is not fully developed. Therefore, I think we should leave these kind of decisions to the governing council or the board of this entity which is going to manage this fund, and not decide at this point of time, and provide enough flexibility to the fund manager to decide it at a later point of time. The second one which I wanted to talk, and some people have alluded to that, is about the team itself. The success of this entire initiative depends on the quality of the team, the ability of the government to recruit, retain people who have investing experience. I think within the government system itself, there are some examples. India Semiconductor Mission tried to do something like this. It was a grant program. Of course, that was also a large program. They have an experience. There are some learnings from there. But the 2 important points is there needs to be a market-linked compensation with outcome-driven kind of compensation to be given to them. And considering and this is a strong recommendation from our side, to say that this is going to be initially 100% government money, and it's large sums of money. And the underlying investments are going to be into deep tech, R&D, innovative companies, and the failure rates are likely to could be very high as well. And therefore, administratively, some protection needs to be given to the team to ensure that genuine bona fide kind of failures the government doesn't go behind them, and you understand what I'm trying to say. So apart from many other things about the fund of fund and stuff like that on which we have given recommendations, I think these are the 2 points which I wanted to make.
2 very important points. Thank you for raising it, and hopefully we will get support from the government for that. And now I come to Ajay Chaudhary. Last word, Ajay, you have.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank God. So I want to come back to the point that was made right in the beginning. We are moving into a world of unipolar situation. It's no longer multipolar. Therefore, tech sovereignty becomes absolutely critical. And therefore, we should not just look at words like deep tech, etc. We should look at a palette of technologies that we must own. Because even if you look at GPU type situation today, America has put a ban on sending beyond a certain level. These kind of things are going to happen more and more often. And therefore, we need to relook at the way we are looking at this whole issue. Let's not leave it with deep tech. And I think what technologies are needed, we need to define them, could be 10, 12, 14. And out of those, we should keep investing into startups and corporates and private sector. We should not just restrict ourselves to startups alone, because there's been a lot of discussion only on startups. I think we need to involve SMEs, we need to involve corporates, and we need to get R&D done in corporates and SMEs as well. I do understand that a lot of R&D and development happens in startups, but that's only combinational stuff, not basic stuff also. I think the second point that I want to make is that we need to have a mix of grants, we should have a mix of loans, we should have a mix of equity, etc. Because otherwise, what happens is that a lot of VCs don't take the risk of investing into deep tech or any of these areas because they don't have revenue. And sometimes this revenue may not appear for 3-4 years. So how do you get into a, for example, if you look at a stealth startup that is working on an area which they don't want to talk about, then who will give them the funds? So we need to think through all of these things in a slightly different way. And the amounts that we talk about when we do investments into startups should be much larger. For example, in quantum, since I chair the quantum mission, we discovered that a lot of R&D is required. So you can't do with just 2 crores and 5 crores. You need to go to 30 crores or 50 crores. So the big challenge came in, how do you protect the investment of the government? And that's where we came up with this whole idea of CCPS and giving the government an option to invest later. So I think these kind of areas we must definitely look at. Lastly, what I want to mention, which is something that Saurabh mentioned earlier, is that unless we specifically talk in terms of demand aggregation and government preference for buying from products that are made in India, we are not going to get anywhere, because this is the kind of stuff that created America. They created many, many organizations from DARPA, which were actually funded, supported, scaled by DARPA. Now, this is the kind of work we need to do. Otherwise, it will remain an incomplete objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. I want to repeat, all the people who are listen-only mode, they can go to the website MyGov, and there is a
I'll just post that
portal where you can give your comments. All your comments are appreciated. As Minister said, this is an opportunity for all of you to give feedback onto the implementation of budget recommendations. Now, of course, I will not be able to summarize the breadth and depth of discussions that happen. I'm just going to read out some terms that I just wrote down: account for failures, impact large number of people, incentivize managers, right to win, leadership with experience, acquisition of talent, companies, IP, national research agenda must be aligned, venture builders, CCPS, demand aggregation, keep it simple, flexible, must have investing experience, outcome-driven compensation, protection of teams, account for failures. I talked about it. Commercialization. So that those are some of the key terms that I noted down. I think the next step is we will consolidate all this and come up with a note or a paper, and which will probably become the input for the cabinet note. We will draw upon many resources to help us prepare that. More importantly, in the implementation, as you can see, there are large number of initiatives planned, will require support from industry, support from the investment community, support from startup founders, support from people with experience in doing these things, incubators, etc., academic leadership. So we will draw upon all of you to actually go ahead and implement. I think this is a very important step, I believe, because the implementation has private sector involved and hopefully private sector led. And this is a very long-term 50-year program. So we need to also plan for, I think nobody mentioned this, I will say this, we also need to plan for succession planning. The people who start this may not be there later on. So we need to think about, how do we run this for the next 30, 40 years? And so we need to think about, and one point which was captured, but I want to reiterate, we need full support from the industry. Private sector R&D is happening, but is not happening with enough depth in the country. So we need support from industry, and I look forward to actually all industry associations also participating in this, CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, NASSCOM, all EPIC, which Ajay, so all of you actually helping with driving this implementation. I also want to conclude by thanking all the people here. You have, I know, worked hard for the last 3-4 days. I saw all of you running around today. So thank you all very much. And thanks to all the people who have contributed, all the people who have joined. And I hope you will all submit your comments in the portal. I will leave it to now Abhay to conclude this.
No, I think, first of all, thank you very much for making this a very, very interesting discussion. Just 2-3 points I want to clarify because this issue came up that, for example, Baba Kalyani ji also mentioned, the government is aware of the fact and therefore the general financial rule will not apply. In fact, we will create a special purpose fund which shall make its own financial rules. So I think the government does recognize. And I think the point that was made that this fund is for investing in private sector R&D, not just for startups. So it will be done definitely for corporates. But the fund would like to really choose cutting edge technology and not subsidize the routine R&D of the private sectors, which otherwise they are already doing or they would have otherwise done also. But something, which they are not able to do today, but are cutting edge. There are significant risks involved, which have long gestation periods. And I think those are really the technologies that will really qualify. And it doesn't matter, therefore, whether it is a startups or a large R&D or a focused research organizations, any of these projects. So I think we will look for the detailed inputs and all the participants who are there online, who are in the listening mode, they are also most welcome to give their suggestions on the MyGov portal. And I think as Honorable Prime Minister also mentioned in his speech that government is committed to a Jan Bhagidari approach, where we would like to take the inputs from all stakeholders and create a scheme which ultimately benefits us and our country. So I think that is really the goal. So thank you very much for joining this. I would like to thank also Chris Gopalakrishnan and all of you who contributed to this very structured way and including, I think, the presentations and the points that came up. So thank you.
Yeah. So thank you all. This concludes today's session. We are signing off.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whosoever would want to join in that concluding session, which concludes not only this theme but other sub themes also. So they are most. They can continue on the same link. We will be starting at 4:45.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell me what you were trying to tell me. Yeah. Hmm. 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 My morning time. Not possible. Our evening time, is it possible? It'll be his morning. Yeah, yeah. My morning is very tough. Yeah. No. Yeah, we can. So if I have time, I'll do it on Saturday, but no promises. I just bet you. What does he want? Anything specific? Okay. Okay. Still want to share that the Wadi plot is now available for a single grade or view face to face at your office. Kindly share an opportunity. 7th, no? Friday, 7th. Daniel wanted me. Now he's telling today. Did you check with him yesterday? He said it's okay. Okay, all right. So if since he's coming in any case, yeah, so then I will make some time and I'll tell him. Yeah. 'Cause lunch is there, it's not lunch. So what do you want to add on Monday now? Just check what does he want? He wants morning, no? Check with him. Yeah, check with him. Yeah. No time. Yeah, connect.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
It's okay. No, whenever. I met him, that meeting. So Friday, let's see when I come. Or I'll decide. Yeah, yes, that you do. So the credit card has to be activated. If not, the rest is all okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All not necessary. I think it gets done. Just tell away, swing, going.
Hello, hello. Hello. Professor Kamakoti, can you hear me? Can you unmute and speak? Kama? Kama, you are muted. Can you say something?
They can't speak.
Hey, we are not able to hear.
I can hear you, sir.
Camera on. Hello, I think our audio and video are coming perfectly.
No, my audio video is coming, but I was listening to Professor Kamakoti, whether he's not because he has to give a presentation.
No, we can hear him now.
Yeah, we can hear him.
We can hear him.
Minister, sir. Kama, can you say something?
I think we are not able to hear, Kama. You maybe
Hello.
someone else, if we can speak. Professor Sarkar from IIT Madras, can you speak? Okay. Let me just check. I think I will check. I think there is some problem with this WebEx thing, and then.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hey, are you filling it up? Sunetra?
Yeah, I think it's we are simultaneously.
Yeah, now it is okay. Kama, we can hear you now. Now you
Hello,
are
sir.
muted, of course, but maybe you can. Yeah. Now
okay.
it is okay.
Yes.
Good.
So can you see this PDF file and
Yeah.
I think can the Ministry of Culture switch on their video?
then they will.
I think, can I ask everyone to switch on their cameras? Surveyor General of India's office. Please switch on your camera. Your camera is currently off. And also the Ministry of Culture, Gyan Bharatam Mission, also please switch on the cameras. All those who have joined, please switch on their cameras.
ऐसा लव करूं
ये कौन है साजिद मलिक
इंडस्ट्रीज जेनेसिस जैक रोटर स्पीकर से कंफर्म कर ले उसमें एक बार दिखा देंगे लाइक कामापुर
Can I check with the speakers all? So, Surveyor General, can you speak something?
Please, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
This conference is being recorded.
Ministry of
Ministry
Culture.
of Culture. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
This is from
Good.
Ministry of Culture.
Yeah, and Department of Agriculture Research. Can you please speak something?
Dr. Gautam, kindly. Yeah, Dr. Gautam will speak, sir.
Yeah,
Dr. Gautam, kindly once you test your audio.
Testing or testing. Testing.
Huh? So we are waiting for the Honorable Minister to join, and then I think we will start. Rest everyone is there. I think we are expecting the Honorable Minister very shortly, and then we will start. So just wait for 2-3 more minutes, and then we should get it started. So I think we will start with PMRF and then Gene Bank, and followed by RDI fund, and then Jnanam Mission. So, Namaskar, sir. Sir, on behalf of Department of Science and...
Yes, you can start, please.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. So, Namaskar, sir. On behalf of Department of Science and Technology and sister ministries, that is Department of Agriculture Research, Ministry of Culture, Department of Higher Education, and Surveyor General, Survey of India.
Echo, it's echoing. I think someone has to, they have to stop their audio, sir. Whose echo is coming? Yeah.
Now is it okay? I think all participants may please mute their audio. I think Survey of India, please mute your audio only when you are allowed to speak. That time you switch it. Please, everyone, please mute their audio. Yeah. So I think thank you very much, sir. Today we had a discussion on the important budget paras which are related to investment in innovation, and I will just share the slide for a discussion which will give the context of a discussion. Sir, as we know that this budget 25-26 augments the decade of efforts in the area of I think my slide is taking time. Sorry, please. Anyway. Okay. Anyway, I think I'll just speak. I think we had a 5 important breakout sessions, and these breakout sessions discuss research, development, and innovation fund, deep tech fund of funds, and these two were from the Department of Science and Technology, PM Research Fellowship, which is an initiative of Department of Higher Education, Gene Bank for Crops Germs Plan, which is the Department of Agriculture Research, National Geospatial Mission, and Gyan Bharatam Mission. So we had a breakout session involving stakeholders today in the afternoon, and there were very good discussions. A lot of key points, challenges, recommendations have come out, and I will request the moderator, each one of them, to summarize the recommendations before you. And these moderators is one of the stakeholders we have chosen who were actually driving this entire discussion. So let me begin by first requesting the Department of Higher Education, the Ministry of Education, for the Prime Minister's Research Fellowship. I will share the screen. Yeah. Let me just check. Yeah, so I will just
can I share it?
Make it slideshow, and I will request Professor Kamokoti from IIT Madras to summarize this discussion of their group.
Professor
So
Abhay,
over to
I have
Professor
the slides.
Kamakoti.
Can you? Yes, Professor Abhay, I have the slide. Can I share it?
Professor Kamakoti, you are muted, so you are not audible. Can you unmute?
So I'm I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Matey, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Professor Kamakoti.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Professor Kamakoti, we can hear you.
We are not able to hear Kama.
Sir, is it okay? Hello? There's some problem there. Others are able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
I can hear both of you.
We can hear you, but
Yeah, go ahead, Kama.
yeah.
I don't know whether, sir, Honorable Minister is able to hear.
Hello.
Abhay ji,
Sir, are you able to hear?
I can hear
so I
only
think
you,
that.
and I am quite happy hearing only you.
So he can't hear us. So
No, sir. We will get. I think there is a problem of the people who have joined from WebEx of linking them. So maybe what I will do is that I'll start with the Ministry of Culture because they are also on the Bharat VC. So they should be able to, I think, also
No, but
speak.
are they sitting
So
in
let
their
me
offices
just.
or what?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We are ready, sir.
So, let me just share the screen for and
Is this
presentation
not
for
an
the ministry.
Abhay ji, this is NIC correction, no?
Yes, sir, but somewhere on the WebEx and somewhere on the Bharat VC. So I think over to Ministry of Culture.
Because you and I
can
are
start
on
now.
NIC.
Yes.
You and I are on NIC.
Yes.
So
Ministry of Culture, can you start?
प्रणाम आदरणीय माननीय मंत्री महोदय, मैं संस्कृति मंत्रालय के ओर से यहाँ प्रोफेसर श्रीनिवास वरखेड़ी, वाइस चांसलर, केंद्रीय संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय, मैं यहाँ आपके सामने आज ज्ञान भारत मिशन के बारे में जो चर्चा यहाँ चली है उसके बारे में कुछ बिंदु आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूँ. Are you able to hear me?
I think I can hear you.
Are you presenting?
Audible?
So
Am I audible?
Like is he?
Am I audible, sir? Secretary, sir, am I audible? Secretary, Science and Technology, sir.
So then why we are not able to hear? I am. Yes.
On. It is on. Actually, initially they were okay with the sound. I don't know.
So I think we will. Sir, are you able to hear Ministry of Culture?
I could vaguely hear for a while. Then again, it has gone.
No. I think let Ministry of Culture start. Probably we will shift into another room. So please start. I think Ministry of Culture.
Hello. Sir.
I can hear a voice saying yes.
Okay.
But nothing up to yes.
माननीय मंत्री महोदय और यहाँ उपस्थित सभी भारत सरकार के सचिव, अन्य अधिकारी जन, आज संस्कृति मंत्रालय के द्वारा समायोजित ज्ञान भारत मिशन के इस परिचर्चा सत्र में हमने जो चर्चा की है उसके बारे में 4 बिंदु आपके सामने मैं रखना चाहता हूं.
So after a Sir, can you hear me, sir, now? I'm just asking Honorable Minister's office.
Sir, am I audible now? Sir?
Yes,
Am I
you are
audible now?
audible. You are
Okay.
audible.
So shall we
RDI.
begin, sir? Shall we begin, sir?
You are audible to us.
Yeah, please. I think Ministry of Culture can
Okay.
start now.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, sir. नमस्कार, माननीय मंत्री महोदय, भारत सरकार के सचिव तथा अन्य अधिकारीजन, उपस्थित सभी महानुभाव, संस्कृति मंत्रालय के द्वारा आयोजित ज्ञान भारत मिशन के संबंध में जो परिचर्चा यहाँ हुई थी, उसके कुछ बिंदुओं को आपके सामने रखने के लिए प्रयास करूंगा। मैं प्रोफेसर श्रीनिवास वरखेड़ी, कुलपति केंद्रीय संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालय नई दिल्ली। मेरे साथ आज यहाँ संस्कृति मंत्रालय के सेक्रेटरी, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी, सभी अधिकारीजन उपस्थित है। उसके साथ प्रोफेसर सुधा गोपालकृष्णन, प्रोफेसर शशि बाला, प्रोफेसर चक्रवर्ती कन्नन, प्रोफेसर गिरीश नाथ झा, प्रोफेसर रवि नारायण आचार्य, प्रोफेसर विजय लक्ष्मी नंदा, प्रोफेसर रजनीश कुमार मिश्रा, ये सारे विद्वज्जन यहाँ उपस्थित रहे। We discussed 4 major points: international practices and standards, digitization use of technology in preservation of manuscripts, and institution of knowledge, and the connection of Indian knowledge system to the ज्ञान भारत मिशन। बेसिकली ज्ञान भारत मिशन एक भारत सरकार का माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के एक नया बड़ा विजन को लेकर आगे बढ़ रहा है। पूर्व में नेशनल मैनस्क्रिप्ट मिशन आज एक नया रूप धारण किया है। मैनस्क्रिप्ट वाज अर्लियर कंसिडर्ड टू बी द एक संस्कृति के प्रतीक के रूप में उसका ग्रहण हुआ था। आज पहली बार ज्ञान भारतम मिशन के द्वारा ज्ञान के सभी क्षेत्रों को मैनस्क्रिप्ट मिशन के विस्तार हो रहा है। सो इस दृष्टि से आज ज्ञान भारतम मिशन के द्वारा जो बजट में जो इसके ऊपर एक ध्यान देने का प्रयास किया गया है, शायद पहली बार ज्ञान के सभी क्षेत्रों को स्पर्श करने के लिए जितने भी स्टेक होल्डर्स है उसका एकत्रित किया जा रहा है। इन दैट सेंस दिस मिशन has now become a national mission। राष्ट्रीय के सभी क्योंकि आज संस्कृति मंत्रालय से ज्ञान भारतम मिशन जो आरंभ हुआ है उसका विस्तार एजुकेशन के सभी क्षेत्र पर हो रहा है। अर्लियर द स्टेक होल्डर्स वर ओनली रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट्स, स्कॉलर्स। नाउ स्टेक होल्डर्स आर इंक्लूडेड schools, colleges, research institutes, universities and other international bodies। इस दृष्टि से आज जो चर्चा हुई है इसमें इंटरनेशनल प्रैक्टिसेस, राष्ट्रीय अंतर्राष्ट्रीय लेवल पर मैनस्क्रिप्ट्स को लेकर एक ज्ञान को जोड़ने का प्रयास में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संस्थाओं को साथ कैसे हम स्टैंडर्ड्स के साथ उनको इन्वॉल्व करना। आज प्रिजर्वेशन में जो डिजिटलाइजेशन का आरंभ हुआ है, तो उसको लेकर केवल प्रिजर्वेशन नहीं, उसके बाद डिजिटलाइजेशन, उसके बाद उसका एआई के साथ जोड़ने के लिए हमने काफी कुछ सोचा है। बेसिकली उसको नॉलेज के साथ जोड़ने के लिए आज एआई टूल्स और टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग अनिवार्य हो गया है। तो इसलिए मैनस्क्रिप्ट एक प्रतीक चिन्ह मात्र नहीं है संस्कृति का, वो ज्ञान का आकर है। वहां तक लेके जाने के लिए आज जो चर्चा हुई उसमें काफी कुछ रिकमेंडेशंस हमारे सामने हैं। एक माननीय मंत्री महोदय, शिक्षा संस्कृति मंत्रालय के माननीय मंत्री महोदय ने हमें पूर्ण रूप से इस वेबिनार में भाग लेते हुए सारे सुझावों को लिया और उसके पास उन्होंने एक सुझाव दिया, सीरीज ऑफ सेमिनार्स इन वेरियस पार्ट्स ऑफ इंडिया, क्योंकि इसमें जितने भी हमारे स्कॉलर्स हैं उनको आज केवल 8-7 लोग हमें जुड़े हैं, लेकिन भारत में हजारों इस क्षेत्र में जुड़े हुए सभी विद्वानों को जोड़ने के लिए उन्होंने सीरीज ऑफ सेमिनार्स आयोजन करने के लिए, उनके साथ इनपुट लेने के लिए सुझाव दिया है। उसमें 3-4 महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु है। एवरी ईयर वी प्रोड्यूस अराउंड 10,000 संस्कृत एंड लैंग्वेज स्टूडेंट्स एज ग्रेजुएट्स। उनको एक बड़े पैमाने पर ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम आयोजित करना, उनको इन्वॉल्व करना, एंड यूज ऑफ आईसीटी टू इन्वॉल्व वेरियस प्रोजेक्ट्स। उसके साथ रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट के साथ सभी संस्थाओं को जोड़ने के लिए एक कोलैबोरेटिव मॉडल हम डेवलप करेंगे। साथ ही आने वाले दिनों में 1 करोड़ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स को हमें डिजिटाइज करना है, उसको प्रिजर्व करना है, उसको नॉलेज के साथ जोड़ना है। इस प्रक्रिया में सभी को करेंगे तो लॉस ऑफ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट एक बहुत बड़ा रिस्क है। उसको लॉस ऑफ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट को रोकने के लिए हमें सिलेक्शन ऑफ मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स फॉर डिजिटाइजेशन एंड रिसर्च पर्पस ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ देयर रेयरिटी एंड यूनिकनेस। कभी कभी माननीय मंत्री महोदय एक ही मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट बचा है दुनिया में, ऐसे भी सिचुएशन है, बहुत कंडीशन का ठीक नहीं है, तो उसको डिजिटाइज करते हुए उसको हम तुरंत एक्शन में लेके जाएंगे। ऐसे हम 300 से 500 मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पहले साल आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे, उनका डिजिटाइजेशन के साथ उनको नॉलेज तक हम लेके जाएंगे ताकि इम्पैक्ट हमें दिखाई देगा। जब इम्पैक्ट दिखाई देगा तो लोग उसको स्वीकार करेंगे, उसको भागीदारी बढ़ेगी। तो इस दृष्टि से हमें पहले एक स्पेस में हम आइडेंटिफाई करके जाएंगे और मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट से हम नॉलेज क्रिएशन पर जाएंगे। और इसके बारे में हमने काफी कुछ क्वालिटी इश्यूज, डाटा माइनिंग, स्किलिंग, ट्रेनिंग, नॉलेज और इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशन के बारे में हमने सोचा है। धन्यवाद।
Thank you very much. I will now request the Ministry of Education, and I will share their presentation, Department of Higher Education. Let me just share
Hello, Professor Abhay, are you able to hear
slides, PA, and I believe, is it visible, the slide?
Yeah, Professor Abhay, are you able to hear me?
Yeah. So, Professor Kamakoti, can you come and talk about PM Research Fellowship?
Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me? Hello? Professor Abhay, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know whether they are able to
Yes,
hear.
please.
Prashantji, I don't think they are able to hear us.
I also think so, sir. I think they are not
I
able to
have
hear
sent a
us.
message to Chris Gopal Krishnan, sir, because I'm not able to reach Professor Kanadikar.
I'm also calling the nodal officer from DST.
Actually, I think there is a problem with. Okay, so what I will do is that I think we are not able to.
We can request speakers to join through Bharat VC.
No, I think what I will do is we will start with Chris' presentation here. So I will because that we can. Yeah, I'll just request, I think, Chris to start.
Honorable Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh ji, thank you very much for including all of us, and you will see the large number, 20 plus people who participated in the deliberations, for allowing us to participate in this. As the Prime Minister said in his speech to us, that implementation of this budget, he would like all the stakeholders to participate. So we are very thankful for this. People have worked very hard over the last 3-4 days to come up with their recommendations. In a short presentation, I won't be able to capture everything, but I'm trying to summarize it here. Next. So the outcomes expected, as you know, is to create a product and IP-led economy towards the vision for all of us to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. I'm sorry for that mistake here. And for that, the budget, the allocation 1 lakh crore is 1 lakh crore is there, and that's what we have been discussing over the last 2-3 days. Next slide, please. The key recommendations are: one, at the highest level, under the Department of Science and Technology, there is a special purpose vehicle or an entity that is being created to receive this to 20,000 crores, and then in turn allocate to second level participants. The second level participants in turn will undertake the following activities. One is to fund private sector R&D. We are envisaging about 10 programs, maybe average 500 crores. This will be primarily targeted towards large enterprises, existing companies that are at scale, pharma companies, manufacturing companies, electronics companies, which are already at scale, and we will encourage them to look at disruptive technologies that will allow us to get leadership position and export. We are also looking at identifying 20 SME sector companies and look at encouraging them with slightly smaller funding of 50 crores average. The next idea is to fund deep tech startups. The deep tech startups are the one which disrupt the status quo, which look at bringing cutting edge technology to market. So we want to identify 20 deep tech startups, and also 20 deep tech startups which are slightly earlier. So we are looking at 40 deep tech startups to be identified to accelerate their commercialization, their impact, etc. And we believe that this will again create a significantly large number of deep tech startups which are going to become globally competitive. The third idea is to look at lab to market, which means that we will identify ideas from the research lab and commercialize this. So this will be done through what we call an incubation model or a venture laboratory model, where we identify 10 deep tech incubators, and we will through them fund these startups up to 200 crores each. So this, we believe, will actually have broad impact across multiple labs in the country, and we will be able to create maybe 200 deep tech startups over the next few years. Last but not the least is invest in pure deep tech funds. This is a fund of fund model where this in turn will invest in startups. So the reason why we have come up with multiple initiatives is to look at different mechanisms to create impact. When you look at deep tech, it's possible that some will fail. It is also possible that some will take much longer, etc. So we need to look at multiple initiatives, and that's the reason why we have come up with a broad range of initiatives. We also have to, of course, work out the details. The next slide, please. So there are, of course, a lot of ideas that came out, and we have not captured all these things, but we will work with the Department of Science and Technology to work out the details of how to structure this, how to manage this, how to create a long-term sustainable mechanism, including succession planning across these initiatives, because some of us may not be even there during the term of this initiative. So we need to think about this. As I said, we have looked at a decentralized model, multiple parallel initiatives. So these all need to be tracked, reported, etc. We'll come up with a robust mechanism for doing that. And we have also looked at, because we are funding early stage, mid stage, and established companies, we expect results to come in the short term, medium term, and long term. We will work with industry associations to make this indeed happen. Last slide, I just want to thank again the ministry, the government of India, for including us in implementation of this, and of course the DST secretary and the DST teams who have worked very hard over the last 3-4 years with us to put this together. Thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Maybe I will now request Professor Kamakoti to talk about Prime Minister's Research Fellowship.
Sir, I will share the screen, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you can share.
Yeah, I'll share the screen.
You can share the screen.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, respected Honorable Minister and all authorities of the Ministry of Education and also DST, all there. Today we had a very engaging discussion about one of the most important schemes, the Prime Minister Research Fellow. All the panelists are of the undivided opinion that when we look back at Viksit Bharat 2047, there will be two schemes that will be determining the technology supremacy of our country. One is PMRF, another is ANRF. So this was the overall opinion, and we are very happy to tell some of the things that we discussed as a part of this whole webinar that we had today. So this scheme is under the Ministry of Education, and we have a budgetary allocation of 8,300 crores over 5 years. So some of the this is the second avatar of the PMRF, and we have 4 important points that we discussed. One is involvement of industry, because we really want translational research to happen. Many of these research must find an end product which is having more social and economic impact. So some of the very important outcomes that we want is that top tier researchers must contribute to India's future growth, both in industry and academia, and ensure industry participation with more translational research. We also had a very deep discussion on the assessment of PMRF, where we are looking at more tight monitoring, specifically from a sustainability angle, because research has to basically align with the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And also we were looking at aligning with other schemes like the ANRF, the Vishweshwarya Fellowship Scheme, etc. of the government, so that we have a proper, much more tighter assessment in terms of how this research is translating into great societal benefit and also economic benefit for the country. And we also started looking at, we spent considerable amount of time on the outreach of PMRF. Today, these schemes must be popularized more pan-India, because now we are looking at 10,000 scholars. The PMRF one had 3,000 scholars for 5 years, while we are looking at 10,000 scholars. And another important aspect that came out is, after they finish, some of the bright scholars must be retained in India, and they should benefit India. And that was also one point that was deliberated. And for some of the things like today, DRDO type of organizations only hire BTechs at an entry level. Can the PhD research scholars be also absorbed into many of our strategic agencies and PSUs? And can there be a new scheme that could come where they could go in a lateral entry mode? So these are some of the outreach related discussions that we had. And today we are having PMRF restricted to some around 50-60 institutions, and we would like to have a broader outreach. So one of the things that was suggested was that can we co-guide students from other institutes who are not PMRF granting institution, and so that over the next few years, probably in PMRF 3, these institutions can also be part of the grant scheme. And from the policy angle, it was also opined that admission across the globe also happens through other means like GRE and other forms. So, and many students write GRE. And today, given the global scenario, it is now a right moment for us with the financial incentive that comes out of this PMRF. It will be a right moment for us to catch more students. And so, can the admission process today is through GATE examination or people who are in centrally funded technical institutions with a CGPA of 8.5? Can we have other modes like GRE, which is also time tested and acceptable across the globe? So these are some of the points that were discussed. And importantly, PMRF has seen around 30% women participation in its first avatar. How do we increase it to 45 to 50% of women participation? So these are some of the 4 important discussion points. And so very clear action items we have in front of us. One is to have an industry advisory committee who will carefully look into all the steps and advise both the ministry and also the coordinating institutes to see how we align with the industry so that these translational research actually finds its final objective, and how we involve industry participants and importantly line ministries so that some of the problems of strategic importance get addressed through PMRF. And we plan to launch by July 2025 that admission cycle. Aligning with ANRF and other schemes will be a higher priority for us, and we'll work very closely with DST and other agencies to see that we are fully aligned. Involve industry and encourage participation from early days, and career plan to work in India and for India by the people who graduate out of the scheme. They must contribute to the overall development of our country, and more women participation. So these are the 5 important agenda points. There are a lot more that we have discussed. So some of the key recommendations are today PhD is basically people who graduate from BTech and then come as the real cream actually goes into industry jobs. So we need to attract people to do a PhD mainly because of the excitement around the PMRF, and they must be future fellows, and that is very, very important. And we should also have a much more closer assessment on a continual basis. Today we are doing it on an annual basis, so it must become somewhat quarterly basis, and we can use, because of the scale of around 10,000 scholars we will be admitting over the next 5 years, we could have AI type of interventions to help us do these type of quick evaluations. And this is also something that has been put forward. And there are other evaluations like a fellow PMRF being evaluated by a senior PMRF, and the PhD to be given in 5 years. Today, PhD has an uncertainty, and we are requesting that we are actually expecting the youth to face this uncertainty at an young age and keep a time. So the time must be not so long, like 7 years or 8 years. Many of the countries, many of the top universities ensure that their students graduate within 5 years. So that also we must start looking at, and considering GRE and other modes of admission, and reach out to institutes and also align with the existing schemes of the ministry. And today we also involve these students in some of the TA-ship activities of other tier 2, tier 3 institutions, and we are now involving them through Swayam Plus and many other means. But now we could have a much more clearer mandate so that the presence of these PMRF scholars is of great benefit to the polytechnics and other tier 2, tier 3 institutions, so that they will also go interact with the students, and there could be a broader outreach. And societal problems and innovation must be given a high priority here. And so these are all some of the key recommendations. We are very happy, we are very thankful to the Government of India, the Ministry of Education, all who have enabled this. And we are sure that from the academia side, IIT Madras is currently the national coordinator, and we take turns, and on behalf of all the institutes, we are sure that we will take it to a very nice logical conclusion, and we will see that the best benefit come for our country in the Anusandhan and Viksit Bharat 2047. We have no doubt that PMRF and ANRF will be the 2 eyes of our technology superpower. Thank you very much, sir. Hello. Hello.
I think, thank you, Professor Kamakoti. Thank you. I think now I will request the Ministry of Agriculture to share. Maybe I will share their slides and request the Department of Agriculture Research to. So can we have someone from the Department of Agriculture?
Make the presentation. Yeah.
Maybe they need to share. If we share the screen.
No, I think they.
Some of the voice is not coming.
Professor P.L. Gautam will make the presentation.
Okay, we can take.
Dr. Gautam, are you there?
Okay. Then I think maybe I will request Survey of India.
No, he's there.
Then
He's there.
Gautam sir, kindly
share
unmute
the-
yourself, sir. Video option.
Dr. Gautam, please unmute
Yeah,
yourself.
so I think I'll just share the slides of Survey of India.
But why?
Dr. Gautam
Am I audible, sir? I'm Sanjay Kumar.
From Survey for National Geospatial Mission.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so please go ahead.
Honorable Minister and Honorable Secretary and Survey General, I'm Sanjay Kumar. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the recommendations and discussions of the National Geospatial Mission. We had very interesting and very lively discussions. I want to highlight three aspects that we had participation from almost every segment of the stakeholders, be it the central government, state government, business enterprises, academic sector, and the industry in these discussions. And there was several discussions, but all of them were actually converging towards a kind of role of National Geospatial Mission into the growth trajectory of India. And we discussed from central to state to local level of implementation of National Geospatial Mission and its value for the national development as well as industry development and the India's leadership into the international market. So let me go back to the format which we have been given and the discussions are here. So 6 key points of discussions were the need and importance of modernizing geospatial infrastructure for strengthening national geodetic reference frame. So this was all kind of agreed, like, discussions from everyone highlighted about the need for national geodetic reference frame and its importance into undertaking the functioning and working of either it is business enterprise or it is oil and gas industry or it is land department or it is energy department. Everyone talked about the need of this, how it is critical. Then we had discussed about the need and importance of the high quality foundational data, the national foundational data platform, which will be kind of ORI, ortho-rectified imagery network, as well as digital elevation models. So this is where primarily for land records, urban planning, design of infrastructure projects, but of course moving forward towards the citizen services, local government, and business enterprises. The third discussion topic was synchronization and the kind of how do we synchronize the National Geospatial Mission with the other missions. As the Prime Minister talked about, the National Geospatial Mission is kind of driving force for innovation because it provides data, it provides foundation data. So it was also discussed how do we integrate National Geospatial Mission with the other flagship programs of the Government of India. Fourth point was discussed was the involvement of the industry in almost all aspects. It's a kind of horizontal involvement of the industry, not a vertical involvement of the industry, and looking at industry as an equal partner. And the fifth point of discussion was the need for user-centric capacity development for optimal utilization, which means like how do we actually help build capacities of the state governments and the enterprises in using this technology. This is a technology issue and many of the state departments may not have the capacity to actually fully harness the value of it. They recognize the value of it, but they do not have the capacity. So how do we actually look at user-centric capacity development for optimal utilization? And the sixth point was to harness the new and emerging technologies like AI, ML, cloud computing. But I would say basically sum it up in two things. One is the spatial computing, because today the computing is into the 3D environment. So all computing is actually into 3D environment, which is called as a spatial computing. And digital twin enterprise is the kind of information system which you are bringing here. So digital twin enterprise. So these are the two technologies which are driving the fourth industrial revolution and the digitalization. So how do we actually harness the new technologies into geospatial sector? So these are the 6 topics which were discussed. The expected outcome and impact was a lot of discussion was taking place around the expected outcome and what is the impact of this technology, why it is important. And actually several business enterprises like Bajaj Alliance shared about how they are using this technology and what is the kind of impact that if we have a national geodetic infrastructure and the national foundation map, how it will actually help them speed up the implementation of their projects, be it in insurance or banking or rural development areas. Then, of course, effective land administration, Secretary Rural Development and Secretary Land Resources specifically highlighted the need for this, that how it is important for land administration and transition of land to property. So the whole land administration is not about just mapping, but actually जमीन से जायदाद. तो एक शहर में एक जिले में जो है 5 से 7 हजार करोड़ की जो प्रॉपर्टीज हैं, they can be actually mortgageable by this and they can be brought into the economic domain. So that is the kind of impact which was discussed. Increased adoption of geospatial technology across government, industry and academia, which I just shared about it. There's a huge appetite. The huge appetite was showed by some of the case studies. And then at the same time, the topic was how to make the skilled workforce. Geospatial applications, scale geospatial application, but to scale those geospatial applications, we need capacity, we need skilled workforce. Right now, probably about 500,000 workforce is there. But how do we actually look at harnessing the dream of 1 lakh crore market by 2030? It may need a lot of skill development there. And the boost to economy. So all these developments will actually take forward into enhancing the value of geospatial infrastructure. So if we invest X amount of money into geospatial infrastructure, what is the likely impact, which is probably almost 15 to 20 times into the national economy, and then positioning India as a global leader. Positioning India as a leader, in fact, it was also said that, that geospatial is a bit evolved industry as far as export of services is concerned. There's almost 200 companies which are exporting the services, but the opportunity here is that how to move up from the value chain of services to solutions to products. As we grow our industry in India, how do we take our industrial capacity to the world? Those were the expected outcomes and impact. Key challenges and risks which were identified, like limited awareness and technical expertise among government officials and stakeholders. That has been the key. People are aware of this technology, but what is exactly the technology architecture? What is the kind of ICT infrastructure we need? How we can actually implement these programs at the state and the local level was discussed very strongly. Resistance to change. Primarily, yes, there was a lot of discussion, the resistance to change into kind of traditional workflows. And that was primarily driven by the fact that we don't have the standards. So since we don't have the standards, there is a lot of resistance to change because people want to look at ease of using information. They're not looking at just ease of doing business, but ease of using geospatial in knowledge or geospatial services. So there was a lot of demand for standards, standard operating processes, or even to this issuing the guidelines for licensing, procurement, and things like that, which needs capacity, which needs understanding. So how Survey of India can actually help them to build those kind of expertise. In terms of the policy reforms, I think I must congratulate and I want to. Everybody actually was very happy with the policy reforms. Guidelines came in 2021, policy came in 2022, and 2024, we have the National Geospatial Mission. So there's a consistency into the government's approach to highlight this need. So that was all well appreciated, but it's still, to implement National Geospatial Mission, there was demand that, okay, fine, we need to look at mandating the use of standardized geospatial data frameworks, as we just looked at the challenges, and ensure that interoperability between the government and private sector databases, because government will provide the foundation, but then private sector will provide a lot of thematic layers, a lot of IoT sensors, a lot of new kind of database, which will be real time. That real time information needs to be integrated with the, the national frame. So that needs to be mandated. And secondly was the mandating the use of high quality data generated through the NGM, because in National Geospatial Mission, we are looking at generating data which is sub-meter resolution as well. That kind of data appetite is there, and any much of data you provide, the industry and the institutions need better and better. So there was a kind of discussion that we should mandate the use of high quality data which will be generated through National Geospatial Mission, and then we look at modernization of land records and urban planning, design and infrastructure accordingly, and make them mandate to use this so that we don't actually waste so much of time into the undertaking the DPRs and detailed project reports and all, where the projects of the national importance gets delayed. When you start using the National Geospatial platform, you'll be able to get high quality data, and that will be much easier for you. So coming back to the recommendations, the key recommendations.
So just Sanjay, can you just summarize quickly in another quickly? I think because
So coming back to the key recommendations, the recommendations are modernization and strengthening of Survey of India and accelerating the nationwide generation of ORI and DEM is one recommendation. Is standardized training, open data access, geospatial learning in government programs, and certification of institution of surveys and all is the second recommendation. So third is very strong, is the strengthening the public-private partnership models to facilitate collaboration between industry and the government to provide geospatial solutions. And the fourth and very important, sir, to look at the global competitiveness is the global outreach, dedicated international cooperation division within Survey of India, and strengthening the international collaboration through various visibility programs of the Government of India, and also looking at trade missions supported and taken by the Government of India. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. For your presentation. I will now request the agriculture research. I think I'll just share the slides and then I'll request them.
Am I audible?
Yes.
This is from
Yes.
there. Yes. So I will present. Kindly share.
Yeah, I'm just sharing.
Yeah.
I'm sharing the slide if you want to share it.
No, you share, please. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
So,
please go ahead.
So on the thematic area of second copy of the gene bank, we had a fair discussions, and in this discussion, more than 11 panelists and 17 interveners also participated, and with an audience of more than 16,500, and we came up with some crisp and recommendation for this session. The number one is, as the budget announcement of Government of India to establish the second gene bank is a welcome decision of the government, and it has addressed a long-standing need for the safety backup of the valuable bioresources of the country. Since the objective is to have a safety backup, ideal location could be in Himachal Pradesh or in Leh Ladakh area or any other suitable location in the southern region, which may serve as a partial permafrost condition with minimal humidity. The third recommendation is that this has to be a state-of-art, world-class green building facility using latest technologies like robotics, AI, digitalization, non-conventional energy sources, centralized climate control system, and security and surveillance system in place. The experience of Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway, the Future Seed, and that of Seed Biodiversity Alliance in Colombia, and also in Japan and China appears worthwhile, and the agency to be engaged should critically study and analyze these facilities. The need-based capacity building would be very useful. Also, this facility has to focus on the plant genetic resources, particularly for food and agriculture. The strengthening of the 49 NAGs and National Active Germ Plant Site and medium-term storage facility in different ICR institutions should be kept in view to ensure regular seed supply to the scientists for their research and to conserve enough sample in the second gene bank.
It is also important for ICR and BPGR to start preparing by regenerating multiplying accessions in a phased manner in collaboration with the National Active Germplasm site so that duplicate set is ready by time the physical infrastructure of the safety facility is ready. The action plan for preparation of duplicate samples, their temporary storage, and then transportation must be prepared with scientific justification and timeline. And also the last one, the standing committee may be constituted comprising of PGR experts and also from CSIR, DBT, DST, and other government departments. With this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, for summarizing this. Sir, we have now summarized the recommendations of all the 5 subgroups which were related to the theme 6 for investing in innovations, which relates to RDI and Deep Tech Fund of Fund, Gene Bank, and Prime Minister's Research Fellowships and National Geospatial Mission. I will now request the Honorable Minister for his guidance on the theme 6 of the budget speech.
Thank you, Abhijit. While I must thank you, I must also thank all the other participants for all the hard work put in over the last few days, as was being mentioned by speaker after speaker. And it's been an exercise at mutual learning. I mean, it's kind of you, very generous of you to say that you are looking forward to my guidance, but actually, we were actually looking forward to be guided by each other. And I'm sure each one of us has gone wiser than before and more learned than before, having exchanged views, experiences, inputs, which come from the diverse participants from the diverse domains. And therefore, having heard all of you one after the other, I think it makes my task much, much easier, because all that I have to perform now is to deliver my ministerial obligation of formally thanking you all in concluding this post-budget session. I must also at the same time acknowledge the wisdom and the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, who gave us this thought and this idea of having webinars of this nature dedicated to various budget provisions, how and to deliberate as to how we intend to go about with what has been included in the budget and has a bearing on the future growth journey of India. And besides the Secretary, Science and Technology, I also have to acknowledge the presence of the Department of Higher Education, the Department of Agriculture, Research and Development, Surveyor General of India, the Ministry of Culture, the distinguished moderators from different backgrounds, panelists specialized in their given fields from several subgroups, namely 5 subgroups, governing officials, industry professionals, students, and of course, friends from the media. India, as I'm sure all of us would agree, has made incredible progress in the last 1 decade. And it's not just said for the sake of saying, because it gives us delight and pride in saying so, but I think living in an age of evidence-based observation, the figures stand out. We were fragile 5, today we are the 5th largest economy, hoping to move upward to 4th and 3rd in the years to come globally, and is set to become the 3rd at least very soon. India is also now ranked 3rd globally in the terms of scientific research publications, which has also happened in the recent years, and it continues to contribute significantly to the global scientific community. India has also witnessed an increase in the patent grants, growing more than 7 times since 2014, showcasing the country's growing innovation capacity. In the Global Innovation Index, we were ranked 81. In 2014, we have jumped up to rank 39. So I think the figures speak for themselves. India is also becoming a global hub for startups. We were just about 350, 400 in 2014. Now we've gone up to 1.75, ranked number 3 in the global ecosystem. All this happening in the years gone by. And all this has been driven by innovation and also investments and a beautiful synergy struck between academia, research, industry and startups. And I also like to add over here that our future projections point out that we may by 2030 overcome US in the number of publications and come over to rank 1. And therefore, no longer India as a follower, like it was till a few decades ago. For example, television happened in US in 1950, and all of us sitting over here got to see the first Chitrahar in Delhi only in 1970. It's no longer so. So whether it's quantum technology, whether it's landing on the southern pole, whether it's coming on the first DNA vaccine, we are at par with others, and in some aspects also providing cues to others. So we are no longer the followers, we are also offering leads to be followed. And therefore, and I think the other most beautiful part of it is that India is advancing indigenous technologies in areas like semiconductor manufacturing. We have the Bharti semiconductor, the artificial intelligence, 5G, quantum computing, which are, of course, as all of us would agree, vital for our strategic autonomy and also Atmanirbharta. And I'm glad to hear that all the 5 sub-themes have had fruitful discussions. I tried to be there as long as I could, though I was also carrying on with my rest of the work, keeping my ears led to the friends on the screen. And I could at least sense valuable stakeholders' recommendations being presented. The budget allocated to all these schemes discussed today plays a crucial role in realizing the vision of India 2047, driving innovation, technology, progress, and self-reliance, as all of us agree that the future growth from here onwards, in case of any nation, is going to be hugely technology-driven. And as you are aware, the government, led by Prime Minister Modi, is highly forthcoming in encouraging such successful experiments. Also has the capacity to take out-of-box decisions, as happened in the case of space being unlocked or the nuclear sector being opened up to the private players. And even in this budget, the government has established rupees 1 lakh crore corpus fund to significantly boost research and innovation in the private sector. So I think for the first time in the last 10 years, private sector has been involved in a very big way. And there has been a conscious attempt to do away with the cynicism or skepticism or a mutual skepticism which existed between the private and the public sector in the decades gone by. And innovation in the private sector, therefore, is going to also play an important role with a focus on scaling up efforts in sunrise domains. In the budget 2025-26, specific allocation of rupees 20,000 crore has also been made to implement the research, development, and innovation initiatives. The Deep Tech Fund of Funds will also be launched under this initiative to catalyze the next generation startups, because it's easy to start a startup, but it's also our responsibility to sustain a startup. And this corpus fund will catalyze more investments from private sector, including venture capital fund in the deep tech domain and sunrise sectors within a reasonable period. The Prime Minister's Research Fellowship PMRF scheme, launched in 2018 to promote groundbreaking research and innovation in India, has benefited as many as about 3,688 scholars to date. And the Union Budget 2025-26 announces a major enhancement of this scheme, increasing the number of fellowships to 10,000 over the next 5 years, offering more opportunities for talented students to pursue groundbreaking research at top institutions. The Prime Minister Fellowship is not just about financial support, it's also about fostering the environmental and also the nurturing the academic excellence and intellect curiosity. Recognizing the importance of the geospatial data, as was being mentioned by some of the speakers, for national development, the Government of India has also introduced guidelines for acquiring and producing geospatial data, which happened in February 2021, followed by the National Geospatial Policy in December 2022. Of course, uh, piloted by the Ministry of Science and Technology through Survey of India. The National Geospatial Mission is essential for India's vision to become a developed nation by 2047, contributing to economic growth, technological progress, strong infrastructure, and better living standards. And I would like to add over here that we have also been able to allocate 50,000 crore for the National Research Foundation, which has been appropriately named as Anusandhan, going by the Indian resource only in this budget, which would also be supplementing all these efforts. And almost 60-70% of the resource will be non-government. So we will be then living up to the global benchmarks, following the global strategies. Earlier on, there was a cynic tendency to compare ISRO with NASA without realizing that ISRO depended only on government, whereas NASA did not. So now we are also on the same strategic path, which has led to the success of those who started before us. Now, considering plant genetic resources, the PGR, which are critical for developing new crop varieties and ensuring food security, especially in a biodiverse country like India, because that is one sector which has not been fully explored. India's national gene bank is ranked second globally in the terms of infrastructural and species conservation, which is second only to USDA gene bank in the US. India has so far preserved over 4.7 lakh sections of 2,147 species, including the traditional crops and varieties used by farmers. The government has announced the creation of a national and large gene bank replica to safeguard crop germ plasm, which is vital for global food security in the face of global conflicts and disasters. May I add over here that the sister department in the same Ministry of Science and Technology, namely the Department of Biotechnology, has also set up a repository. We have so far collected a gene sequencing of 10,000 human individuals. We hope to have the initial target of 1 million. So there also, and our first gene therapy trial has been successfully conducted with the support of Department of Biotechnology through the clinical trials conducted in the Christian Medical College, Vellore, and it was published by none less than the New Indian Journal of Medicine, which is one of the oldest science and medical journals in the world, which along with the British Medical Journal was started over 200 years back, when the science was exclusively a domain of the United Kingdom before it was partly taken over by the US. Now, coming over to India's manuscripts, which are a rich cultural and intellectual heritage, but are always fragile. Many of them are already so. Modern technology is therefore needed to preserve and make them accessible for future generations. The Gyan Bharatam mission is another very, very visionary, very imaginative, and very ambitious plan to digitalize over 1 crore manuscripts and create national digital repository to preserve India's manuscript heritage for scholars and researchers worldwide. May I also point out over here that in the Parliament House Library, we have preserved, through again the other sister department of this ministry, the CSIR, the National Physical Laboratory has conducted that task. The original manuscript of the Indian Constitution, when Mr. Rajasthan was the Secretary General, with also calligraphy, was Nandalal Bose. So some of us who have not seen this can have a glimpse of it on your way into the Parliament House Library. So that task was conducted again by CSIR. And all the initiatives discussed today, therefore, align with our commitment to invest in innovation, which also happens to be the theme of this day-long brainstorming, and will drive us towards achieving the collective vision of Viksit Bharat, or Century India of 2047. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me a patient hearing, and thank you for bearing with me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar. And I would also like to thank all the participants. Thank you.
So we leave. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.